This is the Fear and Greed Saturday edition, a look at some of the most memorable stories of the week. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
Sean, our Saturday show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think was the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. And because everything between us is a bit of a competition, we will see if we can agree on a winner. This is our first Saturday show for the year, so I am going to start out very early and say I'm aiming for a clean sweep of the whole year.
Every episode, you think you'll win.
Yep, it's a lofty goal, so let's jump into it.
I love your confidence.
I'm very confident.
Let's see how we go.
What do you think was the biggest story of the week? You can start.
Well, it's a lay-down misere, and I don't think you're going to disagree on this one. The US Federal Reserve's decision to start lifting interest rates and what that means for financial markets. Now, throw in some pretty extraordinary inflation figures locally, and you have a contender not for the biggest story of the week, but the biggest story of the year. And this is Fear and Greed's first week back. Incredible. Look, long story short, Michael, price pressures have been flowing through the economy for 6 months for a few reasons. Supply chain disruption. Look at the local supermarket. You can see that. Production disruption. Lockdowns in China ain't good for production. Soaring shipping costs, and that's thanks to COVID. People buying goods, TVs, cars, petrol, that sort of stuff, but not buying services, not going to the cinema, not going to restaurants, not doing education, training, those sorts of things. The theory was that all these factors would push up prices and then that price pressure would pass. But it just hasn't happened. Prices are still high. They're going to stick around a bit, and the US Federal Reserve this week said it was set to start lifting interest rate in the world's biggest economy. Now, the Reserve Bank of Australia meets next week, and it's under plenty of pressure to shift its stance from no rate rises until 2024 to something like rate rises later this year. Why? Because this week official inflation figures showed prices rose 3.5% during the December quarter, and underlying inflation, which is all important, was up 2.6%. Now, the second half of last year, price rises were even higher than that. That triggered a big sell-off in equity markets. The Aussie dollar's fallen back. Bond yields have soared. That's because investors don't want them. Basically, the Fed's comments this week was a fundamental remaking of the economic landscape. Beat that one.
I can't beat it. I'm just going to have to agree with you. The economy is the big story of the week. Very big call to say it's the biggest story of the year, but at the moment it certainly is. Everybody's talking about interest rates. That has such an enormous flow-on effect from, as you say, the volatility we've seen on the markets in the recent couple of weeks through to the longer-term impact really on house prices as well as rates do start to rise. So, yep, we'll agree on that one and we'll say 0.5 point each, shall we?
We'll see how we go in the rest of them.
All right, most remarkable story. I'll go first on this one. I'm going to say it was the COVID numbers over the recent... I'm going to cheat a little bit and say it's not just over the last week, but over the last month to 6 weeks. Because when we did our final weekend show in 2021, we were talking about the modelling in New South Wales that suggested the state could hit 20 or 25,000 cases a day by the end of January. Well, it's now the end of January. And yes, it has been around that 20,000 case number in the last week or so. But since we were last talking about this, Sean, the state peaked at 3 to 4 times that. The good news, though, of course, is that in some states, New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT as well, the peak appears to have passed. There's going to be another rise, you would imagine, when all the kids are back at school. But in most cases, the numbers are heading in the right direction, particularly, say, with the 7-day averages. It's my most remarkable story this week, just because of how far we have come and everything that the country has been through in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable story, but I'd actually like to call in the referee here. If you remember at the end of last year, I did a story which had occurred 10 days previously and I was disqualified because it wasn't in the last week. You are now being disqualified because that story is a 6-week story. Let me tell you my most remarkable story. This week, it's the sell-off in the tech sector. Now, this is related to the rising interest rates that we've been talking about and how tech stocks are valued. When rate expectations go up, valuations of tech companies go down. Some of the biggest tech companies in the world have been hammered recently. Remember, Apple was worth nearly $3 trillion late last year? This week, it's been sold off. Since its peak, it's lost about $500 billion worth of value. You want to get a sense of how much that is? That's more than half the value of all the ASX 200 lost by just one company.
Wow.
Microsoft, Tesla, Netflix, Nvidia, Meta, Amazon, they've all been sold off. Same deal in Australia. Some big falls this week from WiseTech Global and Xero. WiseTech Global, in fact, since the beginning of the year is off 28%. Xero's down 25%. The buy now, pay later operators have been plundered. Even the tech stocks that people like have been hammered. REA's off 18%. Seek's down 17% this year. The speed and scope of the sell-off in the tech sector is quite remarkable.
Okay. Look, I'm not going to accept your disqualification because that was last year and you need to stop living in the past. But I'm going to agree with you anyway that the most remarkable story is the tech sector sell-off simply because of that Apple stat. To have lost $500 billion US dollars in value is just extraordinary. So you can have that one. So it is currently 1.5 to half a point. We'll be back in a moment with the sleeper story of the week. All right, Sean, we're looking for the biggest sleeper story of the week, the story that's trying to fly under the radar a little bit. What was it for you?
Well, to me, it's the one about Fortescue Metals being rated below par by the world's biggest credit ratings agency, Standard & Poor's, when it comes to environmental, social and governance scores, ESG scores. We hear so much about Fortescue being a green company. It's spending hundreds of millions of dollars pushing into green energy, and investors are buying on the back of that. But the company, which makes money digging up iron ore and selling it mostly to China, is not green. The point of this for investors is that if you believe the ESG story and think you can make money from companies taking their social responsibility seriously, then you need to look behind the veneer. Now, I don't really want to pick on Fortescue here because why people like its green story is not because of its ESG credentials right now, but the potential for the company to become much more responsible. And that's the other moral to the tale. The big opportunities for investors this year aren't necessarily in green companies, but in companies that will transform to become greener. That's why it's a sleeper story of the week.
Yeah, that is a good one. I did do and I know I've criticised you for living in the past, but I did a very similar story last year. And you described it as the sleepy story of the week because it made your eyes glaze over. My sleeper story this week is the jobs boom. This is a big, big story. And
hold on. How can the jobs boom be a sleeper story?
Because, again, you're probably going to accuse me of cheating, and I suppose I am a little bit because the unemployment numbers actually came out last week. And that's why I think it was a sleeper. Because last week, everyone was still in holiday mode. And I don't think it got quite the amount of attention that it would have normally if it had happened in the middle of the year. When it happens in the middle of January, no one really notices just how significant an unemployment rate of 4.2% is.
Michael, I might just jump in. Did you read the newspapers, listen to the radio, watch TV?
Yeah.
Surf the web at all last week?
Well, I did, but not many people.
Did you see the 4.2% last week?
Not many other people did. That's the thing. I'm interested in the news, but a lot of people don't. So that's why it's a sleeper story. You're being very, very picky for our first show of the year, Sean.
Well, you're the one that came out and said, I'm clean sweeping this year. I want to destroy that in week one.
Well, can I finish why the jobs boom is a sleeper story of the week?
I'm sorry. Go on.
Well, I've kind of already explained why it's a sleeper story of the week. Now I'll just tell you why it's so important, because it is the lowest rate, obviously, since 2008, which is incredible. And if you were on holidays last week, or if you weren't quite back to work properly and you weren't really paying attention to the news, you might well have missed it. It's having a massive impact, obviously, on the economy as well. The budget bottom line's been boosted by $8.5 billion, according to the monthly financial statements. How about this one, though, as well? Social security payments fell by $1.9 billion. That's a lot of people back in work, no longer relying on government support. There's another element to it, of course, Sean, and this was one that we talked about through the week, and it's the COVID-induced worker shortages that are affecting pretty much every industry, and even farmers are reporting delays in shearing sheep. And when you're a very woolly sheep in the middle of summer, 8 extra weeks is a very long time to wait, I would imagine, speaking on behalf of the sheep.
Have you had experience in being a woolly sheep in the middle of an Australian summer?
What's your favourite story of the week, Sean?
Well, I've got to say Dylan Alcott becoming Australian of the Year. Incredible individual, a great ambassador for his sport, a great ambassador for the disabled, And I think his attitude to life is one of the most inspiring I have ever come across. Dylan Alcott, congratulations, and I'm proud that you're my Australian of the Year.
Next week, Sean, can we compare topics before we discuss? Because you have absolutely obliterated me this week, because it is hard, very hard to disagree with that as being the favourite story of the week. Dylan Alcott is a fantastic Australian and a really, really worthy recipient.
So what's yours, though?
I will put up another one, and it's because we've talked a lot about crypto and then as well the boom in NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Essentially, they're kind of virtual items like artworks or songs or images that use blockchain technology to make them unique. And so artists, musicians and the like have started using this to sell NFTs of their work. So there's even been viral YouTube videos that have sold NFTs of the original video. Don't really know what it means to own one. I mean, it's not like you can kind of hang the picture on the wall or anything, but I suppose it's probably a bit of a status thing that you're the one who owns it. But there was a big development in the NFT world this week because there is now a grandmaster in the NFT world. The family of Pablo Picasso is selling more than 1,000 digital art pieces. They're basically pictures of a ceramic bowl that he made while he was still alive. The bowl has never been seen publicly because it is held by the family. The price is actually pretty reasonable. It starts at around $5,000. And the NFT also comes with an original song written by John Legend. Or if you're more traditional, you can actually just buy the bowl itself, is also going up for auction, but I think that'll probably be a little bit more than $5,000.
Perhaps. Good story, though. Really good story.
Interesting one. But Dylan Alcott, definitely favourite story of the week. So I'm not going to even bother adding this up. Let's just say this week was a warm-up.
Mm-hmm.
Next week, we'll do it all again and we'll start the tally from next week. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
And don't forget, tomorrow we'll both be back with Adam Lang from the Fear and Greed team to have a bit of a lighter look at some of the news around the place. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a good Saturday and a great weekend.